Pinkfresh Studio.
Okay, you're good to go.
Okay, it looks like we might be live. I am concerned after we had all of our technical difficulties last time. I'm making faces at the camera. Hello, friends. I think we're live. Yay, technology. Thank you guys for joining me again today. I'm Emily Midget. In case you don't know, I've worked with Pinkfresh for several years, and I've started doing some live demonstrations for Pinkfresh. And I think it's so much fun to be able to kind of chit chat and connect with you guys in a way that I don't really get to do when I'm just doing the regular videos for the video team. So hello. A few housekeeping things before we start talking about the card. There will be 4 $50 gift cards available for your winning pleasure. 2 will be given away during the live stream. So the more comments you leave in the chat, the more entries you have into the giveaway. And then the other 2 gift cards will be given away after the after the live has ended. They will be given away to people who leave comments watching the replay. So if you want a chance to win one of those gift cards, be chatty, chat with me, ask me questions, chat with your fellow video watchers, live video watchers. I don't know is there a technical term for that? Anyway, but there's our housekeeping, one of our housekeeping. The other element that I wanted to mention to you guys is if you have a question specifically for me, last week there was a lot of chatter going on in the comment section, which is excellent. Great job for entering all of those entries in the giveaway. But sometimes I missed a couple of questions because it got kind of eaten up by the chatter. So if you have a question specifically for me, to make sure that I see it, type question in all caps locks before you ask your question. You don't have to type anything else in caps locks unless you want to, but just that question so that I know that that's directed at me specifically. I will try to continue monitoring what's going on and if there are any questions. But I just want to make sure that you guys know how to get my attention if you have a question, if I'm doing something that's confusing you or whatever. So today we're going to be doing this project. It's kind of an homage to Turquoise. I love anything that is some iteration of this color. In fact, my first house that I had with my husband was varying shades of aqua. And not the outside, but the roof was blue, the walls were blue, my dishes for my that we registered for my wedding were this color. So I love this color. And so we're going to be doing, this is one of those monochromatic color saturated cards that's just my bread and butter, and I love it. So let me go ahead and get the camera switched around. This is more of that technical fun that I am not so great at. But let me go ahead and get the camera switched around, and then we will start working on our project. Here's my face. I'm sorry. Can everyone hear me? I have to get this resituated to make sure. Do we have sound? I'm using my ear pods this time because last time it sounded like I was a little bit far away. So I just want to make sure that I am clear and crisp for you guys. Okay, it looks like It looks like we're good. Okay. Well, hello again, friends. So, all right, for today, we are going to be working with one of my favorite Pinkfresh ink combinations. It's Waterfall, Turquoise, Paradise, and Atlantis. And I used this color palette on every element of my card. One of my favorite things about creating these monochromatic cards is it's kind of like a puzzle to my mind that I have to figure out how to make each different element on this card as interesting, visually interesting as I can, even though they're all basically the same color, because I want that differentiation between all of the different layers. So the way I achieve that, I use different textures. I use different gradations of the same color, different intensities of the same color. I use different materials. So this homage to turquoise uses some really beautiful press plate sets. And we're going to use that trick that I showed you last week that I learned from Carissa Wiley to impress the images onto colored cardstock. So let's go ahead and we'll get started with the project. I'm going to put this somewhere where I can easily grab it in case I need it so I can refer back to it. Okay, so very first thing we're going to do, we are going to do some ink blending, because what we're going to do, I don't know if you could see on the card, there's just the tiniest little touch of texture behind all of my die cuts. And this is created by doing that trick that we talked about last week where we impress the press plates down into the cardstock. Now you could use the BetterPress cardstock to achieve this effect by just impressing the image down into the cardstock. But this is one of those leftovers that we talked about last week, where when you sandwich all of the cardstocks together to make that kind of nice squishy sandwich in your BetterPress machine, you're left with kind of a secondary impression. And so I wanted to take advantage of that and use that for my as an element on my card. But first we have to do some ink blending. So I'm just going to start. I've got the Waterfall, Turquoise, Paradise, and Atlantis inks set out for me already. And I've got my handy dandy Pinkfresh Studio 1-inch blender brushes. And I'm going to, rather than going horizontally or around the edges, today I decided I was going to switch things up completely and go from a diagonal. I'm going to start here and work my way this way. So let's hope it worked as well today as it did yesterday. So I'm just going to, again, as I did last week, I ink up my brush and start off to the side of the cardstock so that I am kind of sweeping away any of the excess ink that might be on my brush, because I want this to be a very smooth blend from one color to another. I don't want it to harshly move from one color. I don't want to have harsh brush lines. I just want this nice smooth blend of the colors. So we're starting with Waterfall. And now that I've got my Waterfall corner, I will move to the Turquoise. Now the Turquoise is, I'm going to just do a very small, kind of not quite as thick layer of the Turquoise, a thick band, because the green in the Waterfall and Paradise is a little bit more intense to my eyes, and the Turquoise is more blue. So I want to kind of maximize on that green, because that Waterfall cardstock that I'm going to use, the colored cardstock that I'm going to use, is going to be, it picks up on that green a little bit more. So I'm just going to do a slightly thinner band of this turquoise to minimize that extra punch of blue. So now we've got Paradise, and that all of that color green versus blue, that's probably something that I see in my head. I have a thing about making sure that all of the colors match the way I want them to, and I overthink things on basically everything in my life. I don't know about you guys. But so I'm starting off to the side, kind of using a sweeping circular motion to bring that color across at a diagonal. I see that there's some chatter about the weather going on. Yay. Entries, get those entries for the gift card in. We had some nasty rain and cold. It was beautiful last week and almost to the point that it was too warm. And then all of a sudden it got really, really cold on Saturday. And it was like, where in the world did this come from? But we're supposed to have gorgeous weather for the rest of this week. So I am totally fine with that. It's like 75 for the high and all of that. So you can see that I kind of was a little overzealous with my ink blending right there. I messed up a little bit. So we're just going to do, I use a combination of the circular and the sweeping motions back and forth to kind of get the effect that I want. I might have to go over again up in this top corner just to try to even that out a little bit. So now we're on the last color, which is Atlantis. This is the darkest of our quartet, and it's such a gorgeous muted teal. Sweeping off that extra ink off to the side. And then as I get closer to this previous color, I kind of slacken my pressure a little bit. I'm pushing a little bit harder towards the corner and then slackening off my pressure so that it's a more subtle blend, so that the colors blend nicely into one another. And ink blending can be a very forgiving medium as long as you keep your hand kind of light. Don't press too hard. Don't start off too hard because it's always, you can always add more color, but it's really difficult to take it away or to try to blend it out so that it's not as intense. So that's my ink blending tip for the day. Hope you guys can hear me okay. Mariette asked if this is the Amalfi Coast. I am absolutely horrendous at remembering the names of the groups, so I apologize. I cannot answer that. Maybe Kathleen can answer that for me. Donna said the brushes do a fabulous job. I 100% agree. The brushes are total game changers, in my opinion. So I'm just going to clean up a little bit because I have that dark Atlantis ink. And I want to do a little bit of tidying in this corner. It's a little bit uneven to my eyes. Okay, make sure. Oh, good. You can hear me. All right. More sweeping. I feel like Cinderella. Okay. This is most likely going to get covered up by our die cuts, but I'm being fussy. Okay. So now we have finished all of our blending for the background. So now we're going to use that texture trick that I talked to you about last week. We're going to use the Grateful Greenery press plate to add a little bit extra texture on this backdrop. However, in order to do that, because this is just a regular piece of white cardstock, we have to sandwich it. This is a piece of Waterfall cardstock from Spellbinders, and it's just, I don't know if you can see how perfectly it matches right here with this Waterfall and Turquoise blend, but it's also light enough that we can use the stencils with the darker two inks towards the end of the quartet, towards the darker end of the quartet. And so we're going to sandwich our blended panel with this Waterfall cardstock, just like we did last week. But this time we're going to use the leftovers. So let me just very quickly tape these together. I have my little leftover pieces of tape. I try to reuse the tape as much as I can. And then we're going to get BetterPress. And I already have, this is a piece of that Bristol cardstock that we talked about last time. The Bristol cardstock has a nice thick weight to it. And so it creates a little extra cushion for our press plates to have the opportunity to press down into it. So I'm just going to, I've lost my tape. How do I manage to do this? Every time. I get myself all set up and then I start working and on something else and take my supplies with me. What was I thinking? All right. So now we've got, now this is the other trick that I showed you guys last week. We're going to do a book fold so that I can make sure that this press plate is pressed exactly where I want it to be. So we close it up like a book, make sure that the magnets are lined up, push down and pull it back over and open it back up like a book. And as long as you keep the spine, quote unquote, of the book next to each other, then your press plate will go exactly where you want it to. So next step is to add the Grateful Greenery press into this Waterfall cardstock using, I think I used turquoise ink for this one. So we're going to go with turquoise. Now, when you're inking up press plates, you do not have to push hard. It is not required for you to push hard because these foam pads are nice and sturdy. There's not a whole lot of give to them. So if you push too hard, then you're going to get ink on your platen, which I think is the correct term. Last week I was having difficulty remembering the terminology. Clearly that didn't go away. So we're going to clean up the gray platen. I think I probably should just write that on my gray piece just to make sure that I know what it's called. Get out my Sharpie. So now we're going to run this through my Platinum 6, which I have set up over here to my right on a handy dandy little TV tray that I stole from my mom. And now, ta-da! So we have our impression from the what is this called? The Grateful Greenery plate on our Waterfall cardstock, as well as, here's the somewhat magical part. Texture, I don't know if you guys can see that because it's kind of subtle, but we have texture on our blended panel. Isn't that fun? Now you can make use of all of the pieces of your project. So some of this is going to get covered up by our die cuts because we do have one more piece that we're going to press into another panel of the Waterfall cardstock. We're going to use the Delighted for You plate. But I just wanted to show you that fun trick that you can actually use that leftover piece when you're using that pressing trick that we learned from Carissa. So thank you to Carissa for being such a genius. All right, so we're going to set this aside for right now. And I just have this piece of Bristol cardstock taped on here. I can use this a few different times before it gets to be kind of mushed and not really, doesn't really have much spring left to it. Clean up my press plate. And then we will move to, while we've got the BetterPress out, this is the Delighted for You press plate set. Comes with some lovely sentiments as well as that gorgeous floral arrangement. So I'm just going to, again, tape this piece of turquoise cardstock to my piece of Bristol cardstock. And then we're going to use the book turn, the book fold trick to place our die cut or our press plate exactly where we want it. And then close it up again, push down, flip. And there is our perfectly placed piece or a press plate that will work perfectly on our piece of cardstock. So I'm going to use, because this is going to be more of the focal point for our card, I'm going to use Paradise ink to ink this one up, just because I want those lines to be a little bit, the contrast between the lines of the image and the color of the cardstock to be a little bit crisper. So when I'm inking up with these Pinkfresh inks, which you can absolutely use with your press plates, I am pressing very lightly, not with a ton of pressure, and I'm kind of twisting as I go. Not putting down too much pressure. I do have a little bit of ink on my platen. I think it's the platen. Why am I so bad at this? All right, now we put it together again, run it through. Let me make sure that I am not missing any questions. Lisa said that she doesn't have a BetterPress and it should probably be on her wish list. It absolutely 100% should be on your wish list. It's a wonderful, wonderful tool. Okay, I don't think I'm missing any questions. Holly, you're very sweet to say that about my watercoloring. I do not get enough opportunities to watercolor anymore. Okay, just making sure I didn't miss anything. I don't think I missed anything. So if I missed a question, feel free to ask it again. Okay, so now we have our beautiful homage to turquoise using the Delighted for You image. So now we have, this is the piece that will be in the foreground, this will be in the background. So we're going to do some stenciling on these using the coordinating stencils. So let me just get my workspace a little bit tidied up here before we start doing our stenciling. I love to color and I love to use all of the mediums. I have far more mediums than I need. I have Copics and Olo markers and watercolors and tons of different brands and colored pencils, and just I love all of the coloring mediums. But the stencils, the layering stencils, I think they are just so ingenious because not everybody has the time or interest in devoting to learning how to color. And so these layering stencils just really make it so easy for everybody. So, all right, to start, we're going to work with the Grateful Greenery piece that we pressed, and we're going to use the coordinating stencils. So this is just a sticky mat. There are lots of versions of this online. This one is from Gina K. It's my newest one, so it's the cleanest. And then there's photopolymer ones that Altenew and Simon Says Stamp both have versions of those. Those are really great. They're a little bit more expensive, but they last, I think, a little bit better than the kind of sticky mats. The photopolymer is nice and sticky, so they are a really great tool if you want to invest in something to hold your paper down while you are doing your ink blending. So I have the stencils for Grateful Greenery. I have 1, 2, and 3. So for stencil 1, we're going to line this up first. Let's see if I can do this sitting down or not without getting my head in the way of the camera. Line the foliage up and press down on that sticky area around the edges of my cardstock, and that will hold my stencil in place. So for this first piece, we are going to do Waterfall. We are going to use the color Waterfall. I've got my ink stand from the ink stand. And again, I am dabbing my blending brush off to the side so that I don't have too much ink on my blending brush. We're going for subtlety. We don't need this to be like in your face blending. We just want a little bit of differentiation on each layer because it's all going to be turquoise anyway. It's all going to be part of the homage to turquoise. Last week it was purple and pink. This week it's turquoise. Okay, so now pull that piece up, and there's our very subtle, very quickly colored ink blended leaves, Waterfall. Okay, for the next layer, for the stem, we're going to line that up. And that next layer is going to be, I can line this up without having to get my head in the way. Oh, bother, it shifted. There we go. Press those down. I've got Paradise ink for that, for the second stencil. Again, tapping on the side to get just very subtle ink blending. I think this card is a little bit more involved than the one last week just because there's more ink blending involved, but I think the ink blending really just takes it up a notch. You could, of course, just leave these pressed images as they are without adding the additional stenciling, but I think it just really helps to, again, differentiate between each layer. That's what we're going for. Okay, so there was our Paradise for stencil 2. I will clean my stencils later for the sake of time so I don't run out. Okay, now for the berries. The berries are very, very light. I'm just going to use the residual ink left on my blending brush to do the berries. I'm not even going to pick up any additional ink because it's such a deep and saturated color that I don't really need anything else. Again, we're looking at different intensities of the same colors to create those differentiations between each layer, between each image. Okay, so there we go. There is our first stenciled image created with the BetterPress. So very subtle, very pretty. And then we're going to work on our Delighted for You panel, which I'm also going to use with the coordinating stencils. So let me get myself organized a little bit better here. Here's the stencils. All right, let me make sure I'm not missing any questions. Question, can you use foil plates with the BetterPress? I get so confused with that. I think Kathleen may have answered the question for you. You can use BetterPress plates with both. You can use BetterPress plates with your foil machine and with your BetterPress machine, but you cannot use foil plates that are specifically advertised as foil plates with your BetterPress machine. The thickness isn't quite right, and there's the coating that is on the press plates is slightly different. The coating is it's a little bit tacky almost, and so that is what helps the ink to stay on the lines, on the raised lines, and keep it from kind of beating up. So the coating on the BetterPress plates is really important, and that's why it can go between the BetterPress and the foil machines, but the foil plates don't have that coating, so you can't use them with the BetterPress. I hope that was clear. That explanation was clear. Are there mini size Pinkfresh inks? Yes, there are ink cubes, and they are great for if you want to do BetterPress with like if you wanted to do different colors for the leaves and different colors for the flowers, you could use the tiny corners of the Pinkfresh cubes to ink up all of those individual images. They're really great, and I'm not just saying this because I work with Pinkfresh. They're really a great investment, and I bought all of them myself, even though I already had all of the all of the ink colors. I am not just a collector, I promise. I have a reason for having all of these things. My husband would disagree, but I have a reason, I promise. All right, so for stencil number 1, this is going to be the stencil that that covers the majority of the flowers. So we're going to use, what color do I have? I wrote myself a little note. We're going to use Paradise ink. We're going to do a light brushing of Paradise ink. So let me grab my Paradise brush. And we're going to lightly tap and just very lightly, very subtly start from the center and work our way out, slackening the pressure from the center out. We do not want this to be super hot and heavy. We don't want the overall color to be overtaken by this kind of fairly dark kind of china blue. Because then if we do that, then it will cover up our lovely crisp lines that we impressed into the cardstock if we get too crazy with the ink blending. Okay. Making sure that I am not missing anything important. Any important questions? It's all important. All of the chatter is important. I left Barney outside today because he was being very noisy last time. We have a Bernedoodle puppy who is 4 months old, and his name is Gus. Speaking of Cinderella, his name is Gus, like the little mouse from Cinderella. And he is just about the cutest puppy I think I've ever seen. He looks like a stuffed animal. He's so cute, and he's going to be so big. I have 4 kids. I have 2 sets of twins, and our house is already quite cramped with them and all of the stuff required for 4 kids and all. And then we have a large pit bull dog, and now we've got Gus, and he's so sweet, and he's gonna be so big. Okay, all right. For our next, this is the layer with the leaves. This is stencil 2. And we're going to use Waterfall ink for the leaves because we used Waterfall ink for the leaves on our Grateful Greenery panel. So I want some consistency between these leaves and these leaves because these leaves are very similar in shape and size, and they're proportional. So I want to try to continue that continuity from these leaves to these leaves. So we're going to use Waterfall ink again. Let me grab my Waterfall blending brush. Again, we're trying to be subtle. We're taking advantage of these super soft bristles on the Pinkfresh blending brushes and just creating a very light differentiation in color. I'm using a circular motion this time rather than the sweeping motion. And you could do this probably also with the smaller blending brushes if you have the 1/2 inch. I just find that I get a lot more control over the subtlety with the large brushes. But you could easily do kind of a flicking motion, a soft flicking motion on each individual leaf with those 1/2 inch brushes. But I'm not going to say that I will not encourage you to purchase the 1 inch brushes especially if you have difficulty getting a soft blend, because these brushes are really, really game changers for that. So there we have stencil 2. Again, I might take stencil 1 back a little bit and add a little bit more color. We're doing okay on time. If I go over a little bit, I'm sorry. Perfectionist I am. It was May the 4th. I can say that, right? I'm not a Star Wars girl, but I'm allowed to say that, right? We're just going to add a little bit more intensity to these blooms because they looked a little bit similar to the foliage. I want those to be a little bit brighter and more intense. All right, that's better. There we go. And once we add that second layer onto those flowers for the shadows, that'll look even more, there'll be even more contrast. So, all right, stencil 3, we're going to use Atlantis ink. This is for the centers of the flowers, which we don't really even need to do this one because we're going to put some gems on there. But for the sake of following my notes, I will use Atlantis on this 3rd stencil. I'm a rule follower. There's stencil 3, and then for stencil 4, we're also going to use Atlantis. Let me make sure that I've got this flipped around correctly. Okay. Make sure I can do this without getting my head in the camera. The sticky mat is very handy. Now we're doing Atlantis very lightly because this is, again, a very intense color. We want it to be subtle. We want the layers to be subtle. So I'm just taking a light hand, light circular motion, light sweeping motion for these flowers up here that have kind of the upward movement. I'm not picking up a ton of ink. I'm just kind of using the residual ink. So there's that last one. See, it intensified a little bit the color in the center, but otherwise it didn't really add any more intensity of color overall that will detract from our background. So for our last, I have this upside down, don't I? For our last stencil, we've got stencil 5. And these are really simple to line up. She says as she has trouble lining this one up. Nope, that's perfect. All right. And so for our last one, we're going to use turquoise ink because we used the lightest shade for the base layer of the leaves. Now for the shadows, we're going to use turquoise since it's the second lightest, or second darkest, I guess. It's number 2 in the group. So it's okay if we make this one a little bit more intense just because we want to, some of these leaves are behind, and so we want those to be a little bit more shadowed. We want to intensify some of the shadows on the top layer of leaves. So this one can be a little bit more intense and not as subtle. All right, done with that. All right, there is our floral arrangement. And you can see that the color saturation from the Waterfall cardstock really helps to kind of enhance that overall just kind of beautiful sea green, kind of under the ocean feel to these impressed images. So now that we're done with our ink blending, let me clean this up a little bit. Let me make sure I haven't missed any questions. You can never have too many brushes. I agree, Lisa. Jen asked if it's one brush per color family. I have a blending brush problem. I have, like we talked a little bit about earlier, I see like the blue, the more intense levels of blue or green when we're coming into these non-primary colors and the secondary and tertiary colors. I see the mixtures more. So I have a tendency to want one blending brush, at least maybe for 2. But with the ink, the Pinkfresh inks, since I work with them, I like to have a blending brush for each color, especially the colors that I use quite a lot, so that I don't get any cross contamination. But you absolutely do not have to have a blending brush for each ink pad. That is my own personal preference. All right. Question. I'm not seeing question from anybody. Okay, I think I got them. Diane, no, Pinkfresh is not offering cardstock. This was cardstock that I have, well, like I have a blending brush problem, I also have a collecting colored cardstock problem. So I have an abundance of colored cardstock options in my collection. So that's why I'm using this. This is from Spellbinders. It's called Waterfall. So now what we're going to do next, after I have, since I have finished all of my ink blending, find my towel so I can clean up that little spot of ink right there. Okay, so now we're going to stamp the greeting. Grab my Misty. So this is another one of my double layered greetings. Last week I shared the trick with you that I like to stamp my sentiments in a color in an ink color that coordinates with the overall color palette of my project. And then I will take that that stamped image and stamp again with embossing ink. And that allows me to, oh, I'm grabbing the wrong stamp set. That allows me to, and then I add iridescent embossing powder over the top. Hero Arts has a line of iridescent embossing powders that I find really, really just such a great enhancement for your these monochromatic cards, because it adds that extra element of texture. So this is the Thanks for Being There stamp set. It has this beautiful floral bouquet, but it also has these absolutely stunning and poignant sentiments with this, and this font for the grateful for you and the thanks is just out of this world. I'm a font girl, and that's oh, that font is perfect. So I'm going to stamp this using I'm going to use Atlantis ink to stamp this. So I'm going to kind of clean off my stamp a little bit, get my embossing powder ready. So the Misty is handy for this trick because we're going to stamp our sentiment with our colored ink on our colored cardstock. I'm going to stamp it once, stamp it twice for great coverage to make sure that there's no ink pooling or anything. Then I'm going to clean off my stamp with my microfiber cloth and stamp again with embossing ink directly over the top. This is where the Misty comes in handy. Not only for getting a perfect impression with our colored ink, but also for making sure that our embossing ink goes exactly where we want it to. So now I'm just going to, this is the Hero Arts Iridescent Blue embossing powder, and it has just the most spectacular shimmer and shine that really helps this sentiment pop from this super color saturated background. So excuse me for a second while I heat emboss this. I don't know if my ear pods will pick this up. Hopefully my call didn't go away. I had a phone call come in. My little boys figured out how to use our Google Nest thing, and they call, hey Google, call Emily Midget. Am I back? Okay, there we go. Oh, good. Yeah, my little boys like to say, hey Google, call Emily Midget whenever they want to talk to me. And so they just called me. Sorry about that, guys. I have they're not four anymore. Oh my goodness, they're five. They're 5 years old. They turned 5 at the beginning of April, and they are full of beans. Sorry, I disappeared. All right, so now we have our beautiful sentiment. I'm going to close this up before I spill it all over myself. And I don't know if you guys can see the unbelievable shimmer and shine on here. Am I frozen? I hope I'm not frozen. Kind of look. Okay, am I back? Let me turn on Do Not Disturb. I don't know how to do that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to, my little boys are trying to get a hold of me from the other house. I'm in my office next door. Okay, so we have our sentiment heat embossed. Now it's time to die cut our sentiment and die cut our press. My little boys next door, and they are, he's not getting them to stop.
Okay, it's Kathleen here popping in just from the off. Just so you know, Emily's still here. It's just, as always, we do have some, well, not really technical difficulties, but it seems to be that Emily's getting a call. So this always stops her microphone working. So just know that everything's still working. Emily's still here, but yeah.
Okay, I just texted my father-in-law. Hopefully he will occupy them. Last time he took them to his house. Today they're hanging out at my house, I guess. All right, can you hear me? Is everything okay? We're gonna do some die cutting now. All right. And if they call again, I seem to be doomed with some sort of technical issues during my lives. Ah, next year they'll be in kindergarten and they won't be doing this. So I'm just gonna really quickly die cut my sentiment and our blended and stenciled BetterPress pieces. So there is our sentiment. And I love how detailed Pinkfresh has been doing these sentiment dies. I think this looks so just super polished and gorgeous. So, and you can see that beautiful shimmer that we've got going on here. So here's piece one, and then we're going to have our Grateful for You and Grateful Greenery and Delighted for You. I combined the two. I'm all flustered now. All right, so let's get the dies and cut these pieces out. And then we can start assembling everything. Oh, that's not the right one. All right, so here we have our dies. I found my tape. It was in a bowl. All right, let's line this up. See if I can do this without getting my head over here. Thank you guys for sticking with me while my children were interrupting me. Here is piece one, focal point one. And we've still got a little strip of cardstock left to use for something else. Tried to orient it off to the side so that it was able to be used for something else. All right, I don't want to get impressions from little pieces of cardstock on my pretty leaf die cut. Okay. Last time die cutting, and then we will move on to assembly. Thank you guys for being nice. These little boys of mine, I have my 11 and a half year old twins they were a cakewalk compared to these little boys of mine. The little boys are in a class all on their own, especially the youngest one, Sam, which I noticed from having two sets of twins. I noticed that there is definitely an element of nature versus nurture. That some things are just they are the way they are, no matter what kind of parenting I do. With my Sam, he's very much he is his own person, and he does things the way he wants to do it, no matter what I say. And he's the youngest child. He definitely gives off youngest child vibes. And then, but between baby A and baby B on both sets of my twins, baby A is the one that is delivered first. And my baby A child on both sets of twins is very, very chill, very calm, very go with the flow. Baby B is kind of a nice word for diva. I don't know. But yeah, so that's he was my diva child. My Sam was the one calling me. All right, so now we have this is Pinkfresh Studio Aqua Glitter Cardstock, and this is just again, I said it last week. The Pinkfresh Studio Glitter Cardstocks are just they're gorgeous colors. They match beautifully with the inks, and they are incredibly sparkly. And so they work so nicely to add these different levels of texture and elements of shimmer and shine to your card front. So I am just going to use my trimmer to trim down a 1.5 by 4.25 inch piece of that glitter cardstock that we're going to use to help kind of ground our die cuts. Okay, so from this point on, the assembly is fairly simple. It's not super complicated. So we're just going to use some liquid adhesive to add this piece of glittery cardstock. Now, when I am adding elements to my card, I try to either keep everything completely centered or I'm trying to keep it in thirds. So either this third of the card, the bottom third of the card, this third of the card, or the top third of the card. So when I'm arranging things, it looks more visually appealing. At least in my head, that's what it does. Okay, so now we've got our pretty textured impression in the background, and I added some splatters on my original card that I forgot to do today. But if you want to add splatters, that would be a great spot to do it on your textured blended background. So now we're just going to use some foam adhesive, wrong end, to add our die cut pressed pieces. And since this one's going on first, I'll put the leaves down first. I'll add the adhesive to the leaves first. These are thin foam squares from Simon Says Stamp. Karen said that twins run in families. I didn't know until I got pregnant with twins, but the female carries the gene and is every second generation. My grandfather was a twin. I don't have any twins at all in my family anywhere. The first set we had medical help from the doctor. I had an IUI done, and then nobody felt the need to tell me that once you have twins once, it increases the chances of having twins again by a lot. And so we unexpectedly got pregnant with twins again. And if you could have heard our reaction when we found out that it was twins again, we were both like, what? It was the shock of a lifetime, we'll say that. All right, so I'm going to try to not line this up exactly with my impressed area. I'm going to try to line it up so that is a little bit more visible. And then we're going to add the Delighted for You piece, which I am going to kind of turn a little bit on its side, since we do have this lovely piece of foliage kind of helping create that partial circle. I'm going to I hope I'm not missing any questions. Oh, I see a question. Did I see a question? Question, what tweezers are you using? These are from Spellbinders. They have a really, really, really fine point. And they're just what I always reach for. The ones from Pinkfresh are very pretty and also have a really nice fine point. But these, for some reason, feel a little bit better in my hand personally. But these are much prettier also. But it is entirely personal preference. I have about 17 pairs of tweezers, and I just kind of gravitate towards different ones for different projects. All right, let's adhere this down, and then I'll add some more foam tape as needed. Okay, so now we're going to add a little bit of glue. There. make sure. Hi, Amy. Hello, friends. I'm reading through the comments while this is drying, while this glitter or this glue is drying. Diane said that is a well-loved cutting plate. Yes, ma'am, it is. I keep them until they break, basically. All right. I had a comment. Jackie said that I was talking about equipment from different vendors. And one thing that I love about this industry is that we have so many different companies that all create wonderful products, and they all are, so many of them are just friends. I go to a retreat every spring and fall, and I'm so lucky to be able to go to this retreat because it's with a lot of, Gina Kay is there, and Jennifer is there, Jennifer McGuire, and lots of industry people that I used to be absolutely terrified of. But they really are just the loveliest people. And so many of the company owners that come, they're just friends. It's so refreshing for them to not see themselves as competition. They collaborate, they, talk different strategies, they collaborate products. It's really refreshing. And Pinkfresh is one of those companies that, we're all friends here. And that's, I think, a really important thing that our industry does really well, compared to maybe some other industries. Not that I have a wealth of experience, but that's just my 2 cents. Is after witnessing I've been doing this for 7, 8 years now, and it's just I'm always so impressed at how kind and how helpful each individual company is with the other companies that might be considered their competition. It's such a really great industry to be a part of. I'm so grateful. What an appropriate sentiment. I'm so grateful. So now we've got our sentiment added. I'm going to add a little touch of glue here to hold that down a little bit better. I probably could have used a double layer of adhesive on there, just to make that sentiment pop a little bit, but I was too busy yakking. So sorry about that. If you want to remake this card, this would look really good with a double layer of adhesive to pop it up. All right, so now, final step, almost done with minimal technical issues. Thank you, Samuel. So these are Lagoon glitter drops, and I am just going to use them in place of this, to try to kind of add a little bit extra texture and sparkle to the centers of these flowers. And I'm going to use multiple sizes. I'm going to use the large size and then the very smallest size for this top bloom. And then I'm going to use the medium size and the small size for this bloom on the bottom here. Okay. An industry of kindness. Absolutely, Karen. I 100% agree. All right, no questions. Good. Hopefully, I'm explaining myself well amongst my rambles. All right. Kathleen, I think it's almost time for the gift card, maybe, to be announced. Would that be a good idea? Because I am almost finished. You know that my original card had those splatters, and I think it really does make a difference. Now, I do notice that these pieces kind of stick off to the side. If you were going to mail this in a typical A2 envelope, you could easily trim those off. But I also find that I can use an A7 envelope. If I put like an extra piece of cardstock, an A7 5x7 piece of cardstock inside an A7 envelope, I can fit these cards that have kind of the overhang along the edges. The thing that I try to most to avoid if I am going to add some little extras around the edge is to not make it along the bottom, so that when the recipient tries to display the card, which hopefully they will since you made it, um, that the pieces down at the bottom don't prevent the card from standing up nice and straight. So if you remake this card, add double layer of adhesive on your sentiment and add splatters to the background. I use these new, this is they're like pigment powders. I just got them from, I think they're pink and Maine. And it's such a pretty color and it works beautifully. This is the Caribbean color and it works beautifully with the background, with the colors of the background. So, did Kathleen is picking the winners. So get your comments in. Let me look through and make sure that I didn't miss any comments, any questions. Yes, I agree, Lori. I think we had one die machine, no, one company in the United States that made dies, and they very, very suddenly closed earlier this year. And so, so many of our small businesses in this industry relied on them because they wanted to keep the manufacturing within the United States, and that's great. And so now so many companies are scrambling. And it just I think is indicative of how great our industries work together. The companies within our industry, they work so hard to lift everybody up because a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think it's just great that we can all kind of work together and collaborate and make our industry as wonderful as it can be. The guys class, I am so excited to see what comes out of the guys class because that is one area where me, Miss Flower Queen, I struggle with guy cards. Fraternal twins are hereditary, but identical twins are not. So that makes sense. Actually, no, wait. I have fraternal twins. So mine are just special, I guess. I have two sets of fraternal twins. All right. So let me see if Kathleen has chosen Diane Zalusky and Francis Crespo. Congratulations. That is very exciting. You now have a $50 gift certificate to go do some shopping in case I have maybe enabled you to buy some glitter paper from Pinkfresh or maybe these beautiful Amalfi Coast inks or this gorgeous pick it and poke it tool or whatever it's called. It's got a sticky end for picking up embellishments that it's wonderful. Or the beautiful embellishment tray. We have all kinds of options or any of these gorgeous products that I've used on this card. You now have $50. Yay! All right. So I will go ahead and flip my camera around. Hopefully I don't have any uh, issues. Hang on a minute. Here I go again, having issues. You guys get a shot of
Kathleen popping in again. Yeah, it seems like technology gods are on our side today once again. So there she is. Hold on.
Am I back?
Yes, but oh, I need to get you focused. Or now you're back. Okay, I'm gonna shut up.
Yay for technology! Okay, okay, there I am, and I see myself. And so again, thank you guys so much for joining me today with technical difficulties yet again, life. Thank you guys for being patient with me and understanding about my little boys. I'm so glad that you stuck with me, and congratulations to our two winners. And remember, if you're watching on replay, you can leave comments so that you are entered to win two more gift cards, two more $50 gift cards. I hope you enjoyed all of my rambling about how the convoluted ways that I come up with how I create my cards, and all of my love of turquoise and all of the things. So if you liked participating in this, we would love it if you hit the thumbs up or the subscribe button or the share, so that we can, maybe reach some more people and inspire some more people to do some more crafting. And I just thank you, Kathleen, for inviting me back. I really enjoy connecting with you guys, even though I didn't get to read as many comments this time because I was so flustered. But yeah, so thanks so much for having me, and I hope you guys have a wonderful and crafty day. Bye.